Day one, baby.
Day one.
To this day.
To this day. To this day.
To this day.
We're covering today's top boxing news. Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Anthony Joshua posted this caption via social media, and it reads, "When your opposition use you for clout rather than battle scars, I can't respect them as Spartans. I want blood."
You won't get it.
He won't. Anthony Joshua describes the events of the last few days between Deontay Wilder, his team, Tyson Fury, and his team. Anthony Joshua describes it as clout chasing.
How?
One might feel so inclined to ask, how is Daniel Weinstein ruling in Wilder's favor as opposed to Fury's? How could that be categorized as clout chasing?
Does that work?
Well, there's a growing sentiment that there's more at work here than meets the eye, as there are certain red flags that herald something far more sinister, something far more devious.
Who knows how deep the rabbit hole goes on this thing?
Daniel Weinstein's ruling could be described as shocking, tragic even, that the undisputed heavyweight title fight has now been stifled. There are a lot of ways that you can describe what's been going on the last couple of days, but Anthony Joshua himself, he describes it as clout chasing.
Why?
Did you guys notice how Johnny on the spot the people over there at Top Rank were? Reserving Allegiant Stadium for late July?
Allegiant Stadium.
You wouldn't go as far as renting out a stadium unless you planned on staging a big fight, a fight of some size, of some sizable value. You wouldn't go as far as renting out Allegiant Stadium unless you were expecting to be involved in a fight of some significance. I mean, it all wraps itself up a little bit too neat for me.
Doesn't it?
Perhaps even a little bit too neat for Anthony Joshua. Did you notice that it didn't take them long at all to reserve that location, that stadium? Did you notice that?
That was fast.
There were rumors and rumblings. Reference the Top Rank. The people over there working on a contingency fight for Tyson Fury should things with Anthony Joshua fall through. Should things with Anthony Joshua not work out. This was before Daniel Weinstein's ruling came down.
They were saying they were working on something for Tyson Fury.
And it seems like whatever it was they were working on, they must have expected it to be big.
They must have.
Didn't take you guys long at all to rent out Allegiant Stadium.
So how does that work?
Is that like making a dinner reservation to where all you gotta do is call and you can have something reserved for you that same day? What's the waiting list like?
A whole stadium?
And it didn't take long at all, did it? I mean, it didn't take long at all for news to break after Daniel Weinstein's decision came down that Bob Arum was not going to pay Deontay Wilder to step aside, in spite of Frank Warren across the Atlantic Ocean saying the opposite, saying that they were going to try to get the guy to step aside. It just seems like it didn't take Bob very long to arrive at this decision. So many conflicting reports. I mean, one minute Bob is saying that they're going to try to convince the guy to step aside, but they're not going to pay him to step aside. All besides the point, because we see where things are headed. And it just seems like renting out Allegiant Stadium
That was fast.
that happened rather quickly, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
I would assume that that's the kind of thing that takes a little while to work on. Yet, here we are. Allegiant Stadium has been reserved.
I don't know. It's almost like you got the ball rolling on this before Daniel Weinstein's ruling came down.
It's almost like you knew that you were going to have to make preparations for a third Wilder fight to accommodate that scenario. It's almost like you already knew that was on the horizon.
Did they already know?
That's no smoking gun, though. The Fury people scrambling to get things together, orchestrated for a third Wilder fight. I mean, they are working within a time constraint, after all. They've got until September 15th to get the fight done.
Don't they?
So if they are moving fast on this, and things are happening rather quickly, could be because they have to happen quickly. It could be. Could be.
That's no smoking gun.
That's what you tell yourself, right?
Right.
Doesn't have to be a conspiracy.
No, not by itself.
But what if I told you that one of the guys over there at Top Rank stated that Fury would be fighting in July, and he would be fighting on pay-per-view in July? What if I told you that a Top Rank employee that goes by the name of Bruce Trempler said this before Daniel Weinstein's ruling came down? 2 days. 2 days before that ruling came down. The ruling came down Monday, on the 17th. Bruce Trampler was quoted as saying on the 15th, "Your numbers are very high, and I've forgotten Spence, but July is only 2 months away. Plus, Fury already has a July pay-per-view." What Bruce was talking about was the ongoing situation between Crawford, Shawn, and Spence, and what fights are happening and what fights aren't happening. But it seems like Bruce let it slip that Fury's supposed to be fighting in July. And he's supposed to be fighting in July on pay-per-view. And this was said at a time when Fury is expected...
Fight in August.
He's supposed to be fighting against Anthony Joshua in August. On Saturday, when Bruce tweeted this, that's what the consensus was. That Tyson Fury would be fighting Anthony Joshua in Saudi Arabia in August. Yet Bruce is saying they've got a pay-per-view lined up for Fury in July. As it turns out,
Bob Arum's reserved Allegiant Stadium for the third Wilder fight in July.
why would Bruce say Tyson Fury supposed to be fighting in July on pay-per-view if the consensus at that time was that he would be fighting Anthony Joshua in August?
This was 2 days before Daniel Weinstein's ruling.
This was when the news in reference to the Joshua versus Fury fight was at its height, and it was at its most encouraging, its most promising. When it looked like the fight was going to happen the most, what Bruce Trampler stated is that Tyson Fury would be fighting in July, and he'd be fighting in July on pay-per-view. Coincidentally, Bob Arum was very Johnny on the spot in renting out Allegiant Stadium for July 24th. Eddie Hearn was available for comment after news broke that Weinstein ruled in Wilder's favor and that the fight would be going through. Eddie described Weinstein's decision as being rather strange. I myself find it strange. Based on Bob Arum's comments, he led everyone to believe that the contract expired at some point last year. And if it were the way that Bob Arum said it was, if the contract expired, what the hell are you guys going into mediation arbitration for then?
You're going into mediation arbitration over an expired contract.
If in the thick of the pandemic, the contract had reached its term limit, it expired. In a situation like that, there would be nothing to dispute. The contract expired, and it's a tough titty, but it is what it is. And that's not what happened here.
We know.
I found that peculiar, but didn't think too much of it because Bob Arum gave us no reason to think much of it. According to Bob, it wasn't going to be an issue. It wasn't going to be a problem. If the Wilder people had any contractual rights in that situation, I found it strange that they went into mediation arbitration when normally under those circumstances, you go to court.
You do.
If the contract is in any way, shape, or form actionable, why are you going into mediation arbitration when you could just take these fucking guys to court? The way Lennox Lewis took Hasim Rahman to court when Hasim tried to bail on their rematch. Why mediation arbitration?
You know that's a part of the reason I wasn't worried.
Because they didn't take it to court. The way Lennox Lewis took Hasim Rahman to court. Because they took it to a mediation arbitration. That gave me and many other people a false sense of security that if Deontay Wilder and his team had any legal leg to stand on, they'd be in court attempting to enforce this contract, not in mediation arbitration.
An arbitration which had a gag order.
Or I should say, was said to have a gag order, thereby restricting any of the affected parties talking about what the mediation was all about. Based on the gag order, they can't let anyone outside of the situation know what's going on. They can't let a guy like Eddie Hearn, who wasn't a party to Wilder and Fury's situation, they can't let him know that this mediation arbitration might jeopardize the Joshua fight. Some might look at that as an assurance for the top-ranked people.
They're covered.
Well, they won't face any penalties for leading Eddie Hearn on. That there wasn't going to be an issue. They won't face any penalties as a result of that because there was a gag order. They couldn't talk about it.
Right.
So if the top-ranked people knew that the mediation arbitration could affect the Joshua fight, could impact it, then why'd they go into negotiations with that guy altogether? If no one else knew what was going on, they knew.
They knew what the mediation arbitration was about, didn't they?
Even if Eddie didn't. And I don't think that Eddie Hearn would have spent as much time working on Joshua versus Fury if not for the constant assurances from Top Rank. It's almost like they deliberately wanted to waste this man's time and perhaps even fracture his relationship with the Saudis. because neither Frank Warren or Bob Arum have the inside track with the people over there in Saudi Arabia. Eddie Hearn does, and now you've not only wasted Anthony Joshua's time and Eddie Hearn's time, but you've wasted the Saudis' time as well.
And they're not happy about that.
Bob said the contract expired at some point last year. Tyson Fury is under no legal obligation to fight Wilder for a third time, and this mediation arbitration is in reference to a payout. At most, that's what will happen. This is what Bob told everyone, Eddie Hearn included. On this premise, Eddie Hearn started working on the Joshua versus Fury fight, but Bob knew better.
Didn't he?
I mean, if no one else knows what the mediation arbitration was all about, Bob would have known. You're going into mediation arbitration for what is an expired contract. How does that work? If the contract expired, then how is any aspect of it enforceable?
It expired.
How's it actionable? According to you, it expired. So if it expired, then why are you going into mediation arbitration?
Why?
It's expired, isn't it? You go into mediation arbitration, you make yourself subject to whatever Daniel Weinstein's ruling is.
It's binding.
You go into mediation arbitration, which you did, for what is an expired contract.
Something's not right here.
And I think that's what Anthony Joshua is hinting at. It feels like something else, something more is going on here than what we're being told. It feels like the Fury people might be in cahoots with the Wilder people. That's right. They might be in cahoots with them. This entire situation, to some degree, may have been staged in order to use the synergy, the publicity, the public awareness of Joshua versus Fury in order to help sell Wilder versus Fury. Wilder versus Fury 3.
A box office flop.
Don't take it from me. Take it from Bruce. Bruce Trempler. The same Bruce Trempler that last Saturday said Tyson Fury would be fighting on pay-per-view in July. Not in August the way we all expected him to, but in July. It seems that Bruce Trempler was ahead of the curve. Top Rank's Bruce Trempler, who stated, "We'd love to. Let's see if the fighters are realistic with guaranteed demands." Remember, Fury versus Wilder's gate was $19 million and still lost money because sales were low from piracy. Pay-per-view piracy, which we talk about a lot here on the channel. What Bruce Trempler is saying in so many words is what I've been telling you all along. Yes, Wilder vs. Fury 2 sold substantially more pay-per-views than the first fight did. And yes, it did very well at the gate, though ultimately it was still a box office flop. In spite of the controversy from the first fight and how thrilling it was, in spite of everything, Wilder vs. Fury 2 lost people money. It left Top Rank in the red. And with Fury having beaten Wilder in one-sided fashion the way that he did, a third fight might be a tough sell. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Those eggs need more bacon.
Those two guys fought 2 times already, and the last time, one of them won in one-sided fashion. If you ask around, a lot of people still think Tyson Fury won both fights. That being said, what need would there be for a third fight? And if you want to stage a third fight, it's going to be a tough sell. So you're going to have to come at this from some other angle.
You're going to have to find some other way to get this fight attention.
Top Rank was not involved in the first fight, but they were involved in the second one. The second one was a box office flop. It brought in more pay-per-view buys than the first fight did, but more money was poured into the second fight than was poured into the first fight. Look at the guaranteed purses from the first fight, look at the guaranteed purses from the second fight. 30 million Wilder, 30 million Fury. These guys don't draw that much. You can't justify that kind of spending, but that's what was spent. And in order to cover that kind of situation with those kind of price demands, those kinds of guarantees, in order to cover it, you'd have to sell well in excess of 1 million pay-per-view buys, which that fight did not. Controversy from the first fight and all. Wilder versus Fury 2 lost people money.
Because you either make your money back or you don't.
You either get back the money you put into this event in order to be able to stage it, or you don't. And these guys didn't.
Now, I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes with this thing.
Initially, I thought that this mediation arbitration might have been a play from the Wilder people to get at some of that Saudi money. But it seems that not even Tyson Fury and Top Rank are going to reap the benefits of that Saudi money. It seems that that Saudi money, it's off the table because they're not fighting Anthony Joshua. And the Saudis ain't putting up no money for Wilder versus Fury. If the end game were Top Rank getting their hands on some of that Saudi money, they could have used some of that money to pay off Wilder, but Bob Arum has no intention of doing that. So something else must be going on here, and I reiterate, how deep the rabbit hole goes, Nobody knows. Nobody but the aforementioned parties. Those involved.
It looks like Anthony Joshua's not buying none of this.
And I think to some degree, Eddie Hearn isn't either, though ultimately they're washing their hands of the situation because it's out of their control. Even if it's exactly the way that Bob Arum says it is, and we can take the story at face value, well, there's nothing that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom can do about it. That's your clusterfuck. That's your kerfuddle.
You've got to sort that out.
And even if it is exactly the way you say it is, and the story is exactly the way it's being reported, even if we can take all of this at face value, devoid of some conspiracy, that still means that you should have never entered into negotiations with Anthony Joshua, because if no one else knew, you knew what this mediation arbitration was all about. You wasted everybody's time. The boxing fans' time, Eddie Hearn's time, Anthony Joshua's time, and the Saudis' time. Entering into negotiations for a fight you may not have been free to have.
You fucks got everybody all excited for Undisputed.
And now what are you gonna do? Try to sell us a rerun? We've already seen Wilder and Tyson Fury fight 2 times. What, we gotta go for a third? And what's that gonna cost?
I don't care about that fucking fight.
I don't care who wins. I don't care who wins that fucking fight. I don't care if Tyson Fury beats Wilder from pillar to post faster than he did the last time. I don't care if Wilder wins his belt back. I don't care if he wins it back by punching Tyson Fury's head clean off his shoulders. It doesn't matter. I don't care who wins that fight, because as far as I'm concerned, they're both shysters. They're both tricksters. They're both con artists. They've wasted enough of the boxing community's time with their constant shenanigans. I don't think that either of these guys want to fight Anthony Joshua.
They just want to use his name for clout.
They just want to ride his wave in order to help them sell their own fight. Individually, these guys can't fill a high school auditorium. Did you forget what the ticket sales were for the Tom Schwartz fight? Did you forget what the ticket sales were for the Otto Verleen fight? Did you forget Wilder's pay-per-view buys for the second Luis Ortiz fight? These two fucks by themselves couldn't fill up a family diner. Together is the only way they can sell some tickets. The problem is, we've already seen you guys 2 times.
Yeah, I saw this episode already.
That all of this, or some portion of it, to some degree, was orchestrated, was staged with the intention of not only wasting Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua's time, fracturing their relationship with the Saudis, that all of this could have been staged in order to use the synergy from Joshua versus Fury in order to help sell Wilder versus Fury, the trilogy, the 3rd installment, is entirely possible to me. Entirely possible from where I'm sitting, and I think that's what Anthony Joshua is getting at. That these guys don't want battle scars from Anthony Joshua. They want clout.
Because their biggest fight was a box office flop.
Because their biggest fight was the fight with each other, but that didn't make investors money. It lost people money. So now you're trying to come at this 3rd fight from another angle, and wasting everyone's time in doing so. Fuck this fucking fight.
Fuck them all.